Okay, Brian asked, when adjusting brake bias knob, how much should I turn the knob in order to feel a difference? Small increments or large whole turn increments? Wow, Brian, the tricky part of answering that question is every car is different. The brake bias adjuster is different in every single one. In the perfect world, you'd have a data system that's sitting still. You could have it so that it's adjusting, or that it's showing you what the brake bias is. And let's say your car right now is 55% of the braking force is on the front and 45 is on the rear. And you would sit there and you'd go one full turn of the knob and you go, now it's 56 on the front and 44 on the rear. Ah, I know one turn is going to give me about 1% more. Now sometimes you may have to turn it 3 turns to get that 1%. Other cars you might turn it a quarter of a turn to get 1%. If you don't have a data system to be able to measure that, the old-fashioned way of adjusting brake bias is you'd have your car up on stands, so all 4 wheels are dangling free and the car is in neutral, and you have yourself or somebody sitting in the car, and what they do is they start pushing down on the brake pedal, and they push on the brake pedal, and they push on the brake pedal, and they push on it, and they push on it, and while they're slowly pushing down the brake pedal, you're at the front tire and you're trying to turn it like this. You're turning it, you're turning it, turning it, and eventually you go, ugh, it's locked up because the person's just slowly added that much pressure to it, so it's locked that. You should now be able to go to the rear tire, and the rear tire should still be able to turn just a little bit. It'll have a lot of friction in the brake system there, but you should be able to still turn the wheel a little bit, because that means you've got more bias in the front than on the rear. Now, if you get locked up and then you went to the rear and the rears were quite easy to turn, that might indicate you're too much front bias. And again, it's one of those things that the more you do it, the better you get at understanding what that is. And then what you do is, while you're doing that, push her on it, just lock in the front, still just a little bit of turning to the rear. You then have the person take their foot off the brake pedal, they adjust the knob 1 turn around, let's say to the rear. They put more rear bias into it. And then you have to do the person again, have the person squeeze on the brakes until the front just locks, and you go to the rear and you go, no, I can't quite turn it. Okay, 1 full turn made a fairly big change to the rear bias. So you kind of just have to experiment with it that way. Those are the 2 ways of doing it, not on the track. Then the other way is just to experiment on the track and go, I feel like I need more front brake bias, and what would be a good indication of that? Braking and having the rear kind of wag like this. That's a good indication that the rears are trying to lock up before the fronts do. And therefore you might want to turn some front bias into it. And you might just try 1 turn, go 1 full turn and see what happens. And if it still does it a little bit but it's not, go another turn. And if it's like, oh, there's no more of that now, I just don't feel like I'm slowing enough, you might come back half a turn. So the idea is just to kind of keep dialing it back and forth to see what it is. So again, the feel that you're going to get is if there's too much rear brake bias, the back of the car is going to kind of wiggle around and because it's trying to lock up the rears before the fronts. If you're getting too much, if there's too much front bias, you're going to get on the brakes and you're going to get some front lockup, and you might actually start to lose the steering control there because you're getting some front lockup.